You understand their reasons, but who understands what they do to you? You tell yourself they're stressed. You tell yourself they're tired. You tell yourself they've been through a lot. So you forgive them again and again. And somehow your empathy becomes their escape route. This is where being understanding can become dangerous. Understanding someone's behavior is not the same as accepting it. But humans often confuse those two things. We are natural storytellers. When someone hurts us, our brain searches for an explanation. Maybe they had a bad childhood. Maybe they don't know how to communicate. Maybe they're afraid of getting close. Maybe they didn't mean it. And sometimes those explanations are completely true. But truth does not automatically make harmful behavior acceptable. Psychologist Daniel Goleman helped popularize emotional intelligence in the 1990s. He described empathy as the ability to understand another person's feelings. But empathy was never meant to erase judgment. You can understand someone's pain and still reject their behavior. You can understand why someone lies and still refuse to trust them. You can understand why someone gets angry and still leave when they become abusive. That distinction changes everything, because empathy without boundaries can become self-abandonment. Imagine a friend constantly cancels your plans. The first time, they had an emergency. The second time, they were exhausted. The third time, work became overwhelming. You understand. Then it happens again and again. Eventually, you're no longer responding to circumstances, you're responding to a pattern. So why do we keep making exceptions? One reason is the sunk cost effect. Researchers Hal Arkus and Catherine Bloomer demonstrated this bias in 1985. People often continue investing in something because they've already invested so much. Relationships can trigger the same mistake. You spent years together. You've forgiven so much. You've built memories. You've made sacrifices. Walking away feels like admitting those sacrifices were wasted. So you stay. Then you understand one more excuse. And another. And another. But past investment does not make future suffering worthwhile. What if your compassion is keeping you inside a pattern that hurts you? That question is uncomfortable, because leaving can feel cruel when you understand someone's reasons. But compassion has another direction. It should include yourself. Imagine holding an umbrella over someone during a storm. That's compassion. Now imagine giving them the umbrella while you stand in the rain. That's something different. You're protecting them by abandoning yourself. And eventually, resentment begins growing underneath the kindness. You start thinking, after everything I've done, how could they treat me like this? But resentment often grows where boundaries should have been. This doesn't mean you should become cold. It means kindness needs structure. A healthy relationship requires both empathy and accountability. Empathy asks, why did you do this? Accountability asks, what are you going to do about it? Those questions are completely different. One explains the past. The other protects the future. Someone can have trauma and still be responsible for their behavior. Someone can have anxiety and still communicate respectfully. Someone can struggle with anger and still seek help. Someone can make a mistake and genuinely repair the damage. The key word is repair, because apologies without changed behavior eventually become background noise. Researcher John Gottman spent decades studying relationships and conflict. His work showed that healthy relationships depend heavily on how partners respond to conflict, not whether conflict exists. Conflict is inevitable. The important question is what happens afterward. Does the person take responsibility? Do they show remorse? Do they change their behavior? Or do they simply give you another explanation? An explanation tells you what happened. A pattern tells you who they are choosing to be. That doesn't mean people cannot change. People absolutely can. But change leaves evidence. It looks like different actions, different choices, different reactions. If someone repeatedly hurts you and repeatedly explains why, you don't have a communication problem anymore. You have information. And information should change your decisions. This is where self-respect becomes practical. Self-respect isn't thinking you better than everyone. It's believing your needs deserve consideration too. It means your compassion has a boundary. You can say, I understand, and still say, "This cannot continue." You can say, "I know you're struggling," and still say, "I won't accept being treated this way." You can forgive someone and still stop giving them access to you. Those statements are not contradictions. They're emotional maturity. The problem begins when understanding becomes a permanent discount on consequences. Every time you excuse the same behavior, you teach the relationship something. You teach the other person what you will tolerate, and eventually they may not even realize they're doing it. People learn boundaries through repeated experience. If your boundary disappears whenever they push against it, it isn't really a boundary. It's a request, and requests can be ignored. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. You don't need a dramatic speech. You don't need to threaten anyone. You don't need to prove how hurt you are. You simply need to follow through. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, reduce access. If someone repeatedly lies, reduce trust. If someone repeatedly breaks commitments, reduce dependence. The consequence doesn't need to be revenge. It can simply be distance. And sometimes, distance is the clearest language available. But there is one final trap. You can become so focused on understanding someone that you start diagnosing them. You label them avoidant. You call them narcissistic. You blame their childhood. You search for psychological explanations. And suddenly, you're studying them instead of protecting yourself. That's another form of avoidance, because understanding someone can feel productive. Setting a boundary can feel freeing. So ask yourself something simpler. If you removed their explanation, would their behavior still be acceptable? If the answer is no, the explanation doesn't change the boundary. You don't need to hate someone to stop tolerating them. You don't need to prove they're a bad person. You only need to recognize that something is bad for you. That is the part many people miss. You can have empathy without offering unlimited access. You can understand someone without carrying them. You can forgive without returning to the same situation. And you can love someone while choosing yourself. Because real compassion does not require one person to disappear, not even you. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for another person is stop rescuing them from consequences. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop calling self-abandonment empathy. Your understanding is valuable, but it should never become permission for someone else to keep hurting you.